Good morning. I'm Robert Down with, is this not working? I think you moved it. Down with Paige and Ricardo Munoz with Paige on the design side. This morning we're going to be talking about the vision of, as we said, Dr. Chapman and the Center for Brain Health and the Brain Performance Institute. And this is really a journey through our design process with their team to create this space. Really, when we look at the design of what we're doing with the Center for Brain Health and these pieces, you know, it's the subconscious message that we're looking at for everything that we're exploring. So when we look at these trends and the complexity of what the brain is doing and how it's doing, most of the research, the current research, is showing less than 5% of our cognitive power really being utilized for how we're doing what we're doing, how we're visualizing what we're doing. And it's the unconscious activity that's driving this space. And so Ricardo's going to take us through the design process that we went through to explore how this really worked within the Brain Performance Institute.
Thanks, Robert. Is this on?
Now you can change.
Can you hear me? No? Hello?
Yeah, that's good. Now you're good.
I like to walk around. I don't want to stand right there. So when we worked with Dr. Chapman, we learned a lot from her and a lot of the studies and research that she had done. And one of the first things that we did during the visioning sessions, we invited a large number of stakeholders to be part of the visioning sessions where Robert didn't explain that what the people that come here, but the Center for Brain Health and Brain Performance Institute works with CEOs, with veterans who may have PTSD, with autistic children, with ex-NFL players who may have suffered concussions. And basically anyone can go to this facility. So during the visioning process, we, thinking about the unconscious power of the brain and how that's very influential, we devised a series of slides and we projected them. I think we had 40 different types of images, and we tried to elicit emotions from these images. And so we gave everyone a book as we presented it on the screen, and everyone ranked how they felt when they saw this image. Is this the type of building that you want? We didn't ask them to describe it, but do you like this? How is the look and feel of this? Is this appropriate for the building that you want to inhabit? So we went through a visioning session like this, and we collated all the information, and we came up with a concise sort of understanding of what the building should be. And one of the things, we sort of did this in a literal way, but Dr. Chapman's research on the frontal lobe is very important, and we decided that perhaps our building could have an abstract representation of that in its floor plan. So our Brain Performance Institute is this building on the left. This is the campus that was mentioned earlier. The current Center for Brain Health is there on the right-hand side. And we really wanted to make this a part of the campus. We have a very busy street, Mockingbird Lane, which is high traffic, and visually it's not very appealing when you look north. These are different components of the building, and we'll get into the interior. But basically, it's 3 levels with a live lobby, which is the frontal lobe representation, clinician offices, some training spaces for these activities, VR lab, which is very interesting. And the live lobby is really, you'll see in a minute, is really a space of activity. There's 3 levels in there that are visible from the exterior. And so in a way, the facade of the building becomes a chart where the activity becomes perhaps, charting the movements of people as you would measure activity in the brain. So this is Mockingbird Lane with the frontal lobe being there. They wanted the building to be iconic, and it's very iconic, stands out from the gas station and from all the other buildings that are sort of, it's really spurred development in this corridor of Dallas. So that's the public side, more or less, when you're on Mockingbird Lane. But as you're entering the building, this is what you see. And so you have the frontal lobe, and you have the quieter element, which is where the research takes place. The clinicians are doing their work. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, and we have this image here, is that speaking with the users, some people aren't really comfortable walking into a sort of a grand space, sort of they want to enter through a sort of quieter zone. So we have this main entry here, that's the large drop-off canopy, but then we also have quiet entries off to the side that are just the type of environment that a user would want to enter. There you see the existing Center for Brain Health building. But we also took great care in tying the inside with the outside. So there's a healing garden and a plaza on the campus, and these lines are radiating from those columns that we saw in the frontal lobe. And this is a very, this image was taken when those trees had recently been planted, so those trees are much larger now. And so when you enter the space, this is a live lobby. All the columns that you saw on the exterior are the actual structure of the building. And what that does is that it creates an uninterrupted interior space. So someone can enter the building and completely understand what's going on. For the veterans that are trained that way and to analyze situations when they are in the field, this was something that they really liked and wanted us to explore. You see a few columns here, but the majority of those columns are the structure for that frontal lobe of the building. And as we were going through this process, we realized that we wanted this space to feel very comfortable. Be open, yes, and sort of inspiring, but also be comfortable in speech and the way you communicate with others. So when you walk in there, it's surprisingly quiet. That ceiling that you see is absorbed sound, and the shape of that form sort of bounces sound to the side. So it's it's not like walking into a loud museum. All the floor is terrazzo there, but it's very pleasant, a very pleasant experience, very calming and soothing. This is looking at it from the side. You see the Mockingbird Lane on the other side with some of the visual noise that we tried to block. This is at the sort of apex of the ellipse, where we have an installation by a Dallas artist, David Gappa, that sort of represents neurons, and it changes throughout the day. This is looking in the other direction there. One of the major things that Dr. Chapman impressed upon us was that activity is good, movement is good, exercise is good. So we have this stair that encourages people to go throughout the levels. There are elevators in the back on the right-hand side there that are blue, but they're sort of tucked away. And so a majority of the people take this path when they're going to their offices or going through the buildings. And Dr. Chapman also said, I don't want this to look like a hospital. I don't want sterile corridors. I want natural daylight to flood the corridors, and that's very important for your well-being. And someone mentioned yesterday the idea of enclosed office spaces being being something positive, perhaps, because you can drown out every noise. So the offices are sort of enclosed, but they have this glazing that allows natural daylight to come in. And we also have natural daylight at the end of the corridor, so that's sort of a wayfinding element throughout the building. Again, speaking about exercises, we created spaces that were flexible, so perhaps yoga classes can occur. They do occur. And the building has been very well received. They have a lecture series that was implemented, and it's sold out every time they have invited speakers from all over the world, really. And so it was very interesting and exciting experience working with Dr. Chapman and sort of implementing all that we learned from the users and all of the research that she had done and would bring to the meetings into a building that fits her needs. Thank you.
Okay, last chance. Questions? In the back.
Thank you. This is not really a question, it's an opinion and a comment I wanted to share with everyone. I really appreciate what you were saying about the unconscious and how when we encounter a building or a place, we kind of unconsciously read the personality of that thing, of what we're looking. And that's something that Giovanni Palasma was saying, that architecture is an encounter, kind of existential. But then when I see the results of what you're building, and I also refer to what we saw this morning with the first speaker, I see like spaceships, and I wonder what is this unconsciously information that we're getting, because like I see this general like concern that we have, that we don't want to be in like unnatural places, and that person saying we don't want sterile environments, but then we still have these spaceships, and I don't think that that is building a place, or at least not for me. That's something I wanted to share. Like I think many people here were interested in how the brain works, how we create place, how we create meaningful places, and I don't know, I'm like never satisfied with the results I see.
You might want to talk about process.
Yeah, so, you know, what we're demonstrating was a building for these specific users. And what I didn't show, and Mehrdad showed all his iterations of the buildings he's worked on, we had equal amount of ideas and things, and we sort of drove down to what you finally saw. But it was a big process, and we still have to have walls and columns, and, you know, if things could be different, we'd have to, you know, respond to sort of physical, real requirements that are needed, then perhaps we could, you know, create things that are perhaps different. But this is the result that was driven through a process, and it was a very exciting process, and I wish Dr. Chapman would be here to sort of talk to your concerns about spaceship buildings.
I'll ask a question. Is there a possibility of doing some post-occupancy evaluation and then also tying that to short and long-term needs?
Take that.
You want to take that? Mm-hmm.
But is microphone active? Yes, so the building has been open and occupied for approximately 7 months now with the public side of the building. The functional MRI rooms for a lot of the testing components are still under construction, so that's going to open in approximately another month here. We do have a pretty rigorous plan in place thanks to the fact that it is a part of the UT Dallas system. So we are going back in and doing post-occupancy evaluations on it. We are reviewing many of the standards and criteria that we looked at through the design process, and hopefully we'll be able to present that in further papers moving forward as the building gets occupied and we understand more about its use.
Thank you. All right. So in the interest of time, we're going to one more.
Quickly, because I think this is a fair question to address more directly, which is the issue of aesthetics
We got the
versus
mic coming.
performance. I mean, it's easy to critique for aesthetics to a certain extent. Maybe not so easy to do it well, but it's certainly easy to do it. And actually, that's not really the question. You know, the defense is not whether your building's beautiful or not. So careful, in a sense. I'm cautioning you. The defense was, you know, in a sense, look, we were asked to perform a particular service for a client. They have a certain amount of money and the capacity to do that. We're going to see if that works for that particular client based on their intentions, right? It may look like a spaceship. The question is, does it act like one? I mean, right? In other words, there's a lot of architecture out there in the world. It shouldn't all look the same. That's not the intention for this. It's not that we're going to have some prescription that we're giving that says, if you do this, this, and this, everybody will be happy. Good luck with that. That one's been, you know, that's a philosophical problem that goes back a long, long way. None of us have solved it. The question is, do we want things that look like or act like? You know, and we probably want both in the long run, right? We've got a lot of people in the world, a lot of different situations. This has come up over the entire conference. There are people that can't afford anything that we've shown at this conference in terms of the architecture, can't even afford to think about it because they have to worry about what they're eating tomorrow. So the real question is, you know, who are you addressing? Are you asking it to just look like something, or are you asking it to act like something? If you want it to act like something, then yeah, all the parameters that we've been talking about might come into play. But I wouldn't want to discount the just looking like too. But we're in a building that acts like and looks like. That courtyard serves very little purpose except to deal with us and our imaginations as human beings. We can never discount this. So looking like and acting like are both important. So
Absolutely.
I'm just putting it out there.
No, I completely concur with what you're saying. You're spot on with your commentary. And buildings at the end do act and feel, and we need to emphasize the word and.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.